Okay, let's go ahead and get this video started. Hey, this is Daryle. If you've ever left a job because you want to start your own business, or you're currently, you're working in a business, but it's just you, in other words, self-employed, or if you've been in a business for like a few years and it's really just you working with some other people, if you can relate to that, I got to tell you something I think that'll help you just beyond measure. I read this book this weekend called The E-Myth Revisited. I think there was an original book. This is written by Michael Gerber. There was an original book called The E-Myth written in 1988, I believe. And I think the Revisited part came out in 1995. Now, I'm not saying I haven't heard of this book before. I have heard of it, but I always thought it had to do with like e-commerce, because around the time I heard it was, right around with the internet, and, Facebook wasn't even out. It was really all about e-commerce. Like the whole era of business was about e-commerce. So when I heard this book, I was like, oh, this is probably about e-commerce. So I never read the book. Now, what's crazy is I've been around high profile entrepreneurs. I've been around lots of business owners. I mean, I worked in fleet and commercial, selling vehicles, automotive, and all my customers are business owners. And I have never, not that I can recall, ever heard anybody talk about this book. And this book, I'm going to tell you right now, if you fall into that bucket, left a job because you want to start your own business, can hardly get any traction, are still self-employed, working, on your business, or you're, say, a few years in and it's really small and it's just you got to read this book. I wrote down a couple bullet points I want to read off that will help you immensely if you find yourself in any of those buckets I just went over. Because, I really have to take a breather here. I just started reading this book this weekend, and over the weekend, I just got feverish. I couldn't stop reading the book. And that's not me. I want to read books, and I read books, but I'm not like the book readers, right? I can't sit there and read a book in a day. I'm just not that person. I'm not built that way. I've tried it, and it's grueling. But, reading 20 pages, 10 to 20 pages in a day or a night, not hard for me. I can do that. I could not put this book down. Once I got to, I want to say, maybe 70 pages in the book, I couldn't stop, because it just put everything together. Everything. So let me go over some bullet points just so you get an idea. One of the main things the author talks about, Michael Gerber, he talks about this difference between the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician mentality. That alone is worth reading. That alone is, if you're somebody who's left a job because you were doing the work and you thought you could start your own business, that alone is worth reading, because that was me. That was me to a T. The technician mentality is because you can do the work and you know how to do the thing. You think you know how to run a business, and you don't, because it's a completely different skill set. And so what happens is we as technicians go out and we keep doing the work without actually building the business, which requires systems, which I'll get into. And so we just get stuck being self-employed. It's insane when you learn the difference and you're like, oh, that's me. Another thing I learned, schools mainly teach us to be technicians. Grad school, I have my MBA. Grad school taught me a little bit about going into management. But for the most part, college is about learning to be a technician, which we absolutely need technicians. But if you're a technician, right, if you have that technician mentality, you do the thing, and you think you can go into business because you have a business school degree, I can assure you, as somebody who's earned their MBA, most likely you have not learned any of the skills of how to run a business. You may have an understanding of the functions of a business, but not how to run it. Here's another point. Know the importance of systems. So this book goes into systems. That's the big key component to business, is systems. And here's the thing. I knew about systems, but what I didn't know was I was a technician. So I would set up systems like these checklists from a technician's perspective. And even when I got to the point where I would hire other companies or work with other people, I would somewhat go into managerial checklists, but I would always jump in as a technician if they weren't doing it correctly. So what I find is, even as I tried to venture out, I always kept coming back in as the technician. And until you learn about that technician's mentality, you're going to be a technician. Oh my God. This is just my mind is somewhat blown. I haven't shaved. I couldn't stop. I just could not stop. I have to make this video for other people, because nobody made this video for me, or at least it was nowhere for me to see. So for the few people who are connected to me and you want to start a business, do yourself a favor and just look up, just Google the difference. I'm sure it's out there, of Michael Gerber, the E-Myth Revisited, Entrepreneur, Manager, and Technician. Learn the difference. It starts everything right there. Then learn about the systems, the checklist. I'm telling you. Here's another thing I learned. How and what we execute on these checklists that comprise of these systems are indicative to the individuality and are representative of our values as entrepreneurs. That's the key differentiator with businesses. It's not so much what they do, right? Sometimes we look at it and we're like, oh, they may serve this type of content, or they have sodas that taste this flavor, and other companies have sodas that taste this flavor. Or you look at, say, a plumbing company, and you're like, oh, they have, their trucks look like this. And the difference, right, is the individuality of the person who runs the business or started it, right? And the values are a representation of the person who runs the business. And that goes all the way down to the technician. So from the person who started it, right, to the people who actually run it and operate it, and to the people who provide the service, like, the differentiator is that person, the entrepreneur, who puts all of that, basically the vision, the dream, the mission, the purpose, all of that goes down into the business. And so when you're the technician and you're trying to put that in there, somewhat, but it's more like just you as an individual, it's hard to, like, you don't have a business. Oh. People talk about working on the biz, not in the business. Here's the thing. If you don't read this book, while we can agree that makes sense to work on your business, not in the business, we can agree while at the same time having no freaking clue how to go about, like, working on your business. Oh, do I have to have, like, accounting? And, oh, do I have to set up the LLC? Like, it's none of that. It's not registering with the state. It's not getting a checking account. It's none of that. The only way you can work yourself out of working in your business to on your business is understanding the key systems, components, positions that are required in the business. And then you start at the lowest position, the technician, doing the work, right? So you have to do every role at first when you first start. But the only way you can remove yourself from working in the business to on the business is to slowly work your way up to these different positions, right? And filling those lower positions with the doing the work, or whatever it is most crucial to keep the business going. And then you work yourself out of the business. But if you don't plan that beforehand, how do you know? Like, I'm telling you, it just clicked. It just clicked as I read this book. And so I said earlier that I've tasted this before, but it wasn't, I'll give you an example. It wasn't in the business sense. And it's crazy. I just never applied what I've done outside of business to in a business, because we always think about business like making money. But let me just say, if you're at a volunteer organization, if you're, just if you're on a board or anything like that, and you're at the highest level, say president, chairman, anything like that, and you can run the board, you can execute a vision, you understand the importance of the mission, the vision, making sure everybody does their parts, knowing what everybody's parts are, which are usually defined, like as we go in and fill that position, you have done the role of like the owner operator. One of the most important roles, everybody wants to be a CEO, but one of the most important roles is probably the COO, right? The operating officer that makes sure that everything's operating the way it should according to these systems. And if you want to be a business owner, your goal is to completely pull out of that hierarchy and go to the shareholder. So you're no longer operating in the business at all. Like, if you really want to be in the business owner, like own the business, go wherever you want, do whatever you want, you have to have people who can run that business according to your values, your vision, your mission, your purpose, without you being there. And the only way you can pull yourself out of the business to do that is if you understand every role if you understand every role that's in that business. And in order for people to fill those roles, it has to be like defined, like to a T, by systems. Systems make it repeatable. And you have to make it so that you can pull in somebody with no experience. Sometimes that's what you want. And they fill those roles. Anyway, I'm going on and on much longer than I wanted to. I just wanted to put this video out there. If you're a business owner, and I have some friends who, want to be business owners or own a business, right? And you're like me and you're self-employed, read this book or give me a call. Let's talk. I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable how much in my life, how many people I've been around, and nobody's ever been like, Daryle, you have to read that. Nobody. Nobody. I've been with people who like made us read books, and nobody has ever said, and I've never heard, right? And it just could be timing, but I've never heard anybody be like, say, you have to read this book. It just, man, it just, honestly, it like changes, for me, it changes everything. And if it can have this kind of an impact, this profound kind of impact on me, I want it for people who are connected with me, for it to have this kind of impact on you. So read this book, The E-Myth Revisited, Michael Gerber. If you're a technician, like just read the first part, entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician. And if you realize you're like, oh, whoa, that's a little, I don't want to be the mission, the vision, like that's excellent. Because I think that also just kind of differentiates you right there. But me, it helps me understand me so much more about why it was so hard for me to work for other people. When I'm working with a manager, like I am somebody who needs the vision, the mission, like, why are we doing this? Like I'm constantly asking, like, why are we doing this? Like, what's the purpose? What's the purpose? And if it's just money, I lose interest fast. You know, the first time I remember I was working in the first ad agency I ever worked at. And I remember we busted our asses on this advertising campaign. You know, it was for an auto dealership in Albany. And we were just, you know, going out and grabbing video and putting this together. And this is before digital media, right? This was really on radio, television, print. I mean, back then we were still using MySpace and Google was kind of there. And we did these flyers and we just executed this thing. It took like something like 40 something days. And I remember after we got done walking into the parking lot one night, and you know, all the street lamps were on and the parking lot was pretty empty for the entire building because everybody had gone home. I mean, we stayed late, like uploading the video, and because back then, you know, you had to send it to cable. Well, I mean, you still do, but we had to send it to cable and all this stuff. And it was like 7:45. And I remember just kind of like, we got it done. And afterward I was like, that's it? Like, what's next? And if you ever feel like that, that's why. You're the type of person that needs a mission, a vision. Like, why are we doing this? You need a purpose because it can't just be money. And like I said, this book just puts it all together. And I just feverishly read this book. I've started. I know exactly what business I want to do. And now I'm crafting it, the systems, the vision, the mission, the purpose. It doesn't matter if the service has been done. It's the vision. It's like what we're going to push into the universe that matters, right? It's not that you need a unique product. So anyway, all right, I'm done for now. I hope somebody finds this video helpful because I just cannot express enough how much this book changed my entire outlook. My entire outlook. No influencer has touched me more in this book. And I have spent tens of thousands of dollars at times to go to their conferences. And this one book changed more than any of them. More than like 3 to 5 days. This book maybe it just needed to be all put together. But this book alone changed it all for me. And if it did it for me, it could possibly do it for you. All right, I'm going to end this video now. I hope somebody finds this helpful.